we're going to go ahead and kick this off. First off, thank you guys for joining us here tonight. Some of you on the East Coast might be a little bit later than some of you on the West Coast, so thank you all for being here. I am Taylor Moreland. I'm the owner of Agri Spray Drones. With me, I have Ryan Watson. He's one of our product knowledge specialists, and he'll be helping to answer questions and get you guys some information as needed. So what are we doing today? Or tonight, I guess. We are essentially having a pretty informal information session just about spray drones. You know, some of you guys may be experienced users, some of you guys may be very, very new looking getting into this. And so we're going to cover the basics. We also want to be able to answer advanced questions if you guys have those as well. So we'll try to keep a short presentation followed by what will probably be a long Q&A session, which is exactly what I love to do, answering questions. All right, so let's get started. You have questions, then just drop those in the chat or the Q&A there at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer questions at the end. You can also, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I think there's a hand raising button somewhere. If you raise your hand, I'll call on you and I can unmute you there at the end if you want to ask your question verbally. All right, I'll share my screen and we'll get started. Okay. All right, so yeah, this is just, again, basic overview of what we're going to cover. So for starters, just to introduce myself to you guys, again, my name is Taylor Moreland. I'm the owner of Agri Spray Drones. I grew up on a farm in Western Missouri. I've been flying drones since 2014. Spray drones is about 2018. That's when I got started doing that and testing spray drones out. I actually don't live in Centralia anymore. I live back on the west side of Missouri, back on the farm. Very thankful for that, be close to family. In addition to Agri Spray Drones, my wife and I actually run a nonprofit called Frog Mobility, where we build mobility devices for children. And if you'll indulge me, every time I have an audience, I like to take a brief minute here and kind of show you guys what we do at Frog Mobility so that you can spread the word and kind of help us help children. This is just some of the devices that we design and build at Frog Mobility. That's the GoBro for Go Brody, my son's name. He was born with spina bifida, so he's paralyzed from the chest down. So we make some things to help him, and it turns out they can help other kids too. And we love doing that. That's the frog right there, to help kids crawl who can't use their legs. So if you know of anybody who can use one of these devices in a family that we can help, reach out, let us know. Thanks, guys. All right. To the meat and potatoes of the presentation here, spray drones. So first we'll kind of cover what we do here at Agri Spray Drones. And for starters, this is our mission statement. So empowering rural America with new opportunities, with new technology. Whenever I started this company, I was just looking for a way to solve the supply-demand gap for aerial application in the row crop industry for fungicide, mainly on corn. But as it turns out, these drones are actually empowering so many people across the country to start businesses, to bring jobs onto the farm that never would have existed without this technology. Really, really cool to see people coming back into ag, back into rural America that didn't have a chance to prior. So that's a huge priority for us. This is our team. Well, some of our team, I guess. This picture was actually taken earlier this year. We've grown a little bit since then. There's about 21 of us full-time now here at Agri Spray Drones, mostly in Missouri, but we do have folks spread out across the country as well. In addition to a dealer network that we are growing rapidly and a reseller network as well. Just a few pictures from our warehouse here. So our training room on the bottom left, there's Mac in the parts department there, and then the front of the building. They're our main facility in Boonville, anyways. This picture was taken today. I had Elijah pull these today, so that's our current stock of T40s, T20Ps, primary drones that we're focused on right now, anyways. And then, of course, accessories are at the bottom. And then that's just a picture of our tech room. We're currently still fixing drones for a few guys. That's actually a T-30 you see right there, kind of tore apart. Okay, so a big question everybody has is about regulations on spray drones. So this could be an entire webinar in and of itself, but to simplify it, let's just kind of cover the basics here, what you need to operate. So the first three things you need, the big three things you need from the FAA, that is your 107, 137, and 44807. 107, that's any drone you fly commercially. Small drone, big drone, doesn't matter. 60 question multiple choice tests. You can find study guides online. We can supply you with some study guides as well. It's if you study for it, you'll pass it. It's not that difficult. Every pilot has to have one of these. Now, the other thing, two things here on the screen that you see, the 137 and the 44807, those are exemptions. They're not actually licenses. They're basically exemptions exempting you from the regular rulings of the 107, allowing you to dispense pesticide and fly a drone over 55 pounds. These two things are like learning a foreign language. So that's where it's always a good idea to have a consultant or somebody who knows how to get these things approved, do it for you. So that's what we do here at Agri Spray Drones. We have a compliance manager here on staff. Charlie's great. And we work with third-party consultants as well to get these things pushed through as quick as possible and help you out with anything else you have. Used to take about a year and a half. Now it's looking like about 8 weeks. There's, of course, variances in this, but they're going through much quicker now. Two of the things you have to have that are not listed: in number on every drone. That's very simple. We help you out with that as well. And every pilot has to have a class 3 medical. This, again, it's also very simple. Doctor who is an AME can do this for you. And then there are state requirements as well. Every state is different in that regard. Okay. I think right now Ryan might be popping up some polls, some polling questions. So if you see it on your screen, feel free to answer those just so we can get a good idea kind of what everybody's experience is with drones, with ag, and what you want to use a drone for. That'll help us kind of answer questions a bit better. All right, let's look at spray drones and what they're being used for right now, anyways, and what they can be used for. So row crop industry is the dominant force driving the use of spray drones, obviously. And when we look at the row crop industry, what are we talking about these drones being used for? So primarily, it's low volume application. We're not looking at these drones replacing a ground rig or a John Deere sprayer. They've typically between a half gallon and 3 gallon per acre is what you're going to be doing with a spray drone. So very similar to what a crop duster or an aerial applicator would be doing. And a lot of that is fungicide and insecticide. On corn is a big driver of that. Soybeans, wheat, are kind of fall second, third place potentially. And then, other crops, cotton is big down south as well. So anyways, anything that a helicopter airplane can do, a drone can do. And then we also look at a few of the things that they might be more versatile at doing. So things like spot application, and just parts of the field, small fields, or fields that have a high degree of topographic change or surrounded by trees. Drones are a great fit for that, of course. Just a few pics here to show you guys that yes, drones do work for fungicide. Right here, this is actually from a couple of years ago. Obviously, fungicide's been used on corn and other crops from the air, applied from the air for decades now. So a drone's really no different. This just proves that point exactly with these trials that were done a couple of years ago. And then this is actually a side-by-side of with herbicide application with the drone. Now, first off, I want to point out this was off-label application. It was done by necessity by a grower because of a very, very wet spring or early summer that they had. So anyways, what this shows us, though, is it does show us couple of important things. It shows us that obviously timing is critical, not just for herbicide application, but for any application on any crop. Timing is critical, and 9 days late is what the right side of the picture shows. Because again, it was wet when he applied with the drone. It rained again, and he couldn't get back in there until 9 days after with the ground rig. And picture taken a month after that application. So the weeds should have died if they were going to. Obviously, they're not going to. So timing is incredibly important. The other thing it shows us is that you don't actually need volume to get coverage. You just need a method to get coverage. And a drone's method of providing coverage is through air. So prop wash. That's how we're getting coverage with drones. That's why you can utilize a lower volume. Again, lower volume, not lower concentration or lower AI per acre, but lower volume. All right, there's another poll coming up here. It looks like, you guys. All right, so beyond row crop, what else? Well, I think the second biggest use and a growing use for sure with spray drones is pasture and forage production. I don't know about you guys, but I grew up on a dairy farm, and we had some beef cattle as well. And our pastures were pastures because they were full of ditches, saplings, fence posts, rocks, lots of things you don't want to drive over. And so a drone has none of those issues, meaning that your application costs, your maintenance costs goes way down on pasture and forage with the drone. And Group 4 herbicides, not only are most of them labeled for low volume application from the air, but they work very well with low volume application. So by Group 4 herbicides, I mean things that you would use in pasture. And then there's also potential, of course, for the granular spreader in pasture as well. Okay, this is a short video kind of showing a few different applications. This is a T30 here, actually. Kind of some different special use application, different crop use applications. You can create three-dimensional flight routes with these drones. Very cool. Something that most guys don't think about, but there's no wheels. They fly, and they're very, they're GPS guided. So if you can create a route, and through DJI Terra and other programs, you can create three-dimensional flight routes to do very, very cool stuff on forestry, on mountains, orchards, things like that. Yeah, vineyard application is interesting. Vineyard orchard application is interesting because growers have used blowers for a long time in these crops, but it's been blowers from the basically bottom up. This is a blower from the top down. And greenhouse painting is growing fast with drones. Something, again, a niche application that few people actually think about. We've done quite a bit of this with the T40 and the T30, and it works very well. All right, one more poll coming your guys' way here. Okay, so when it comes to how you operate a spray drone, you guys have seen the videos. Ryan probably will drop in a video to our T40 demonstration video. It's pretty self-explanatory, especially if you guys kind of see that video, watch the process. So this just kind of shows you the flow of that. You can, if you have the right exemption or if you have multiple people in the field, you can actually swarm multiple units to cover larger areas. These drones are able to be controlled manually. They have obstacle avoidance, terrain following, onboard FPVs. You can see what the drone sees. Okay, what's new? All right, this is probably what you guys have been waiting for at least a little bit. This kind of what's next, what's new on the market. All right, so when we look at what are new, we'll look at a few things here. So on the DJI side, the T40 was brought to market, let's see, October of last year. So the T40 has been in the US for just over a year. So we've had a year of experience with the T40. There's thousands of them out there across the US. Millions of acres have been sprayed with the T40 this year, and we have seen every problem that we could possibly see with the T40. We've seen it. And the T40 is coming back for next year, which is awesome because when we look at our experience in the spray industry, we've seen the T20, uh, up close and personal, helping customers with the T20, the old T20, the T30, now the T40, and we can honestly say that with the sheer number of T40 units that have been out there, and the amount of issues that we dealt with, the amount of issues that our customers dealt with, it's the T40 is the most reliable drone by far. It has some quirks for sure. Every spray drone is going to have quirks, but the T40 has the least amount of quirks that prevent you from actually getting the job done. It's easy to operate, so we are extremely excited for it to come back for next year as kind of the flagship on the DJI side. And we're actually working very closely with DJI to increase flight speed, to increase pump capacity, as far as how fast it actually releases payload, which will be really good for certain applications and for efficiency in certain applications as well. And there's a few changes on the T40 hardware-wise to make it more reliable also. So T40 is not new, but there are new things with the T40 coming out. T20P, I know a lot of you guys probably overlook smaller spray drones. If you're looking for a spray drone, looking to get into this business, or looking for a new spray drone, you want the biggest, you want the best, you want the most efficient, right? Will make sense. Well, I kind of urge you not to overlook the T20P. I thought the same thing. I actually told DJI not to bring it to market or not to bring it to the US because it wasn't worth it. Everybody wants the biggest, right? Well, this past summer, they said, well, we got units. Why don't you go ahead and get some? Let's try it out. And so we did, and I love it. I absolutely love this drone, and I'll tell you why. So the T20P is basically a little sister of the T40. 90% of the parts are exactly the same, just half the motors and a smaller tank. That's basically it, other than a few small differences. And you can use the same battery. You can use a T40 battery or a T30 battery, and you can get double the flight time. Well, almost double the flight time out of it. And so every drone on the market right now, every spray drone on the market, the big spray drones are made for short flights, heavy payloads, covering large acres, getting back fast, landing, refilling, swapping batteries, getting back up in the air. It's fairly labor intensive, but you get the job done fast. With the T20P, it's a different approach. It's a lower payload, longer flight time. You can get 3 or 4 tank loads sprayed out per battery charge with the T20P. So even though it's half the size of the T40, it's not half as efficient. There's some swath width calculations there as well, and that's what you guys got to look at when you look at spray drones. Is what's the swath width and the tank volume? What's the ratio there? So as the drone's size increase, the swath width does not increase proportionally. The T40 has the widest swath width, widest reported, tested, tried and true swath width on the market today, despite not even being the biggest drone. You look at the XAG P100 Pro, you look at the Helio 272, their swath widths, despite whatever marketing might say, is not as wide as the T40, even though the tank volumes on both those drones are actually bigger than the T40, meaning that unless you're doing high volume work, 5 gallons per acre, then they're not going to be any more efficient than the T40. So you really got to pay attention to what you're actually using these drones for. Whereas a T20P swath width is going to be between about 21 and 26 feet, most likely, depending on how you're operating it. And with a half-mile long square field, 2 gallon per acre rate, fly down, fly back, a 21-foot swath with a T20P, you utilize 95% of your tank volume, which is great. All right, off my soapbox on the T20P. Sorry. Okay, M3 and M3T. So these, I'm excited about these, but at the same time, it's like I want you guys to approach these slowly because many people think that I'm going to get an M3M, a Mavic multispectral, or Mavic multispectral. I'll be able to do crop scouting. Well, it doesn't tell you what's wrong with your field. But with tools like Pix4D, And I urge you guys to check out Pix4D. Just go to pix4d.com, Pix4D Fields, and look into some of their videos that they've got. Um, you can actually create some really cool maps. Really, it's extremely easy to use. You can create um, spot spraying maps. So that's what their magic tool, the magic tool 2.4 is used for. Spot spraying maps with the DJI drone system. We've been looking at software for a long time, and honestly, people ask my opinion, and why don't you sell, multispectral drones? Why don't you sell camera drones? It's like, well, because it's pictures from the sky. It doesn't really give you any value. You can't get value from it to make action on. That's until now, until Pix4D actually has a simple, easy to use tool that can work with a spray drone. So now you can go from actually taking your multispectral or even your thermal drone up in the air. RGB imagery is all you need. Take your drone up in the air, take the pictures, put it through Pix4D on site at the field edge, and then create a spot spraying map or a variable rate map and put that into your T40, T20P, and it's a seamless process. And I mean, we're so excited about it that we're selling Pix4D now because we've used it enough that we are confident in its abilities. So yes, definitely check out Pix4D. If you're going to be getting a mapping drone, you need to have software to run it. And then people ask me, okay, should I go M3M or M3T? What's the difference? Okay, here's what I'll tell you. If you don't know what multispectral is, then learn that first before getting multispectral, because a lot of the analysis you can get with multispectral can actually be done with just regular RGB, regular camera, meaning that the M3T, the thermal, Mavic 3 thermal, has a regular camera on it, and you can actually use that regular camera to create those NDVI imagery. And then you get a thermal camera, which is cool for other stuff. Like if you're a livestock guy and you want to check your cows at night, it is legal to fly a drone at night, small drone at night, and thermal camera is great for that. We use it all the time here on the farm. All right. Okay, think that's about I think that's about it. That's new. If you guys want to see, so I know I mentioned we testing the T40 with the XH 100 Pro and with the Helio. We've got a video on that on the Helio side right now, the 272, the comparison. I try to be as nice as I possibly can here whenever we're doing these videos. We'll have one come out with the XH 100 Pro on the T40 here soon as well. Okay, I think I've reached the end of my presentation. Yes, I have. All right. This is of course, well, you guys know our email and our website and our phone number, but if you don't, there it is. And we will jump over into questions. All right. Looks like we've got the chat pulled up. So I'm gonna go Q&A first, and then we'll jump over into the chat side. If you guys have questions while I'm answering that pop in, just type them in, and we'll get those answered. If you want to raise your hand, then do that, and I'll call on you. All right. Tony says, I have used the Mavic 3M and RTK base station to take photos for Terra software. I have done reconstruction and made a flight path. Can I then move the base station when I fly the Agras T40 with that flight path, or do I have to leave the base station in the same location? Okay. All right, let me think here. You can move the base station, not while you're operating, but if you come back, let's say tomorrow or whatever, and set the base station up for the T40, then in a different spot, that's fine. But you have to do a calibration point. That's the biggest thing there on your reconstructed flight path. You have to drop that calibration point, and that T40 or T30, T20P, whatever, has to be sitting on that calibration point when you start the mission, because it will pull the GPS coordinates to the physical location of the drone. So what we typically do whenever we're doing three-dimensional flight route mapping, taking the pictures, is we find a fixed marker. So we'll put like a paver stone in the ground, painted orange, so that we can see it from the air. And then after we take the imagery, we see that physical location. We mark that point as the calibration point, and then we can come back and set the T40 there, and then we know that it's going to be accurate. Hope that makes sense. All right, great. Thanks, Tony. All right, Walter's asking, will you be providing Pix4D training? Yeah, so we're probably going to do this like in video courses, because there's a lot of folks that are going to be wanting this training all over the place, and so we're going to try to. Pix4D has great stuff out there already, just through the website. But what we're going to do is tailor our training to fit Agris drone users, because that's what you're going to be doing with it, is mapping, so that you can create a map for your spray drone to use. So yeah, we'll be doing that. All right, Cody says, have you done any studies on spray drift distance versus droplet size at different wind speeds? All right, Cody, so we haven't necessarily done this ourselves, but we do. So Steve Lee down at Auburn, we work with him very closely, and he has done extensive studies on this. He released those in kind of a course that he put on. We have that course available in our resource folder for our customers. So our knowledge hub for our customers is like a 3-hour course, but very, very good stuff in there. He did that with different DRAs and different droplet sizes as well. So yes, this is in our resource folder, our knowledge hub for our customers. It's a lot more information than I can put out right now on this presentation. All right, David, as far as mapping, isn't the mechanical shutter on the M3M and M3E the way to go? You would still get the RGB with both versus the M3T, just trying to grasp the use of the thermal sensor minus the mechanical shutter. Yeah, so mechanical shutter is the way to go. All right, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the M3T had a mechanical shutter on the wide angle camera. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I've used the M3T for orthomosaic mapping, and it'll fly full speed and take pictures very quickly, and they come back just fine. So depending on how detailed that you need on your imagery, I guess that would answer your question. If you need it, the only reason that you need incredibly detailed imagery is if you're doing stand counts, and there you're still going to have to fly like 50 foot above the ground, no matter what drone that you're operating. So stand counts just aren't super easy yet with any software. Okay, lastly, what is a good resource to learn multispectral from David? There's not a lot of resources to learn multispectral. There's very limited university data right now. The reason is because multispectral imagery has not been widely available. Multispectral cameras have not been widely available, and they've been expensive. And so there's some research done, but then it's like the thing is on the research side is, okay, it's one thing to research it, but why are we researching it if the broader public can't actually utilize the technology in the field? Because when you're paying $10,000 for a camera, $10,000 for a drone, what farmers can do that? What service providers can do that? Now that the M3M's out, there is a lot more research being done with multispectral. So not a lot out there, sorry. Will the Terra software flight routes become available for the T40 spreader? So three-dimensional flight routes, Tony? They should be. I I don't know that we have used them, but um, I don't think it should prohibit you. Have you tried this? Did it prohibit you from using the spreader on like a 3D flight route? You just pop it in there, Tony. Correct. I tried and I input into my controller and it only gave me spray option. Okay, interesting. Um, we're gonna have to, Ryan, could you make a note on that? I'd like to test that out. We've never actually needed to use the spreader for 3D flight route, so it never came across us, but we're gonna
That's
go
what
ahead
I
and
was
test it
thinking
out.
about as well. Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, we've only sprayed with 3D flight routes. But we're working on so we're working very closely with DJI. We're testing some beta software out actually here this week. Um, so that's something that we can get added to that. Trying to seed urea that was brush mode. Seed area, not urea. Seed area was brush mode. Gotcha. All right. Thanks, Tony. We'll get on that. Okay. Cody says, is calibration possible on the T40 if the true flow rate is different than the set flow rate in the app? If not, what are some solutions? Yeah, gotcha. Uh, yeah, it's, there's not there you can't set a factor. It's like a lot of systems, if the flow rate's off by 10%, then you adjust your factor, you make it instead of 1, it's 1.1, and then that adjusts your actual your rate on the screen to show what your actual rate is. You can't do that with the T40, you know that. So there is no really way to do that. If it's off and it's just way off, um, then that's odd. That's probably a flow meter issue, I would say, or a scale issue, I would say. If it's off minorly, then cheat your rate up or down. If you need 2 gallons and you're getting 2.2 gallons per acre, then cheat it down a little bit. Ryan, do you have anything to add there on that?
Not necessarily. It's kind of a tricky one in my opinion, but
Yeah,
honestly, that would be. I mean, I think what you said honestly fits it.
yeah, okay. Okay, so we set the painted orange stone where the since painted orange stone where the RTK base station was when we mapped. Is that where the T30/T40 should take off from, Rodney? So the the T30/T40 should take off or should be set at the calibration point. And you set the calibration point on Terra. You drop a pin, on the screen on that calibration point, and so that's what we use. You don't have to take off from where the RTK base station was. You can put the RTK base station somewhere else. But if that calibration point is on that orange stone, take off on that orange stone. Okay, what is training like if you buy a T20 PN or a T40 package from you, Jesse? Okay, so training, and it depends. You might drop in where you're at, Jesse. That would help. So we offer free training to everyone. Um, and you can Maryland. All right. So if you want to take our course, we have 3 options essentially. It's a day. It's basically a 7-hour course or so, and it's classroom style training. What we do essentially is we set it up so that a beginning drone operators, no matter what your experience level is, can know what to do, where to start essentially, and how to practice the watch outs, the do's and don'ts, the software side of things, how to contact us for support, and how to get answers for questions whenever you're practicing, all that kind of stuff. And so yes, you can come out to our place here in Missouri. You can do it like a live webinar kind of like this. There's a self-paced course we have online, or we have dealers. And so we probably try to set you up with a dealer closer to you, who would be able to provide the same kind of training that we do, plus some in-person training as well. So I don't know if you've reached out to Mr. Anybody at the office, but we can get you set up with somebody a bit closer to you. Okay, how long till the T30 is no longer supported by DJI or suppliers? Okay, so Tanner, how long till the T30 is no longer supported? Just depends on What you mean by supported? So there's not a they're still periodically doing some firmware updates on the T30, but not as rapidly and as vigorously as the T40. So that is slowing down. There's not going to be any hardware changes to improve any hardware, but we we'll be able to get parts for the next 5 years at least. DJI has a policy after they sunset a drone, they make parts available for 5 years. So there you go, about 5 more years. All right, Cody, have you heard of anyone getting a swarm exemption for 137 operations? Is it practical to operate more than one T40 at a time per pilot? Okay, has anyone gotten their swarm exemption for 137 yet? Yes. Okay, but have they got it for 44807, meaning heavy drone? No. Nobody's got a swarm exemption for a heavy drone yet. It's a matter of time. The FAA is working, no, understands the need for this. They understand the demand for this. So yes, they are working on this. Our compliance manager, Charlie, has periodic talks with them and keeps up on that. But it's a year out for sure, at least. Um, Now, second part of that, is it practical, logistically practical to operate more than one T40 per pilot? Yeah, for sure. Now, two T40s with one pilot, that is practical. You're moving a lot. All right. If you're the refill guy and the pilot, you'd be moving a lot. Wouldn't have to be sitting down very much, but it is practical and you can do it safely as well. Three, I don't think so. All right, regarding nozzle selection on a T30, what if the nozzle is not on the drop-down menu? Gotcha, Rodney. Um, okay, might help to know what nozzle you're using. But we use like air induction nozzles, air induction, AIXR O2s, AIXR O3s, sometimes XR O3s, and we just pick the O2 typically, because the O2 will give you the highest flow rate or run the pumps at the highest speed. Um, but you have to recalibrate. So, all right, you dropped in here. I was looking at something as coarse as possible. All right, Rodney. So, I would recommend running AIXR, O2 or O3, because even though it's an O2 AIXR, it'll still be more coarse than an XR O2, and it'll keep your pressures somewhat, consistently high. If you run too hot, too big of a nozzle, then it'll just like turn into a stream basically coming out of there. So use AIXR O2 or O3 is what I recommend, and just pick the XR02 and do a calibration with that. All right, can you clarify the calibration point in Terra and its use? I normally map with M3E RTK via Intrip, process in Terra, and create my boundaries. I think I may have been placing that calibration point incorrectly. Okay, so David, this depends if you're doing like just a two-dimensional map or a 3D map, just like a crop field map or a orchard mode as they call it in Terra. Um, the use of the calibrate 2D map. Okay, so the use of the calibration point is to drop that calibration point at a known location with a physical marker, so that if you go back to that field, if your boundary has drifted due to GPS drift, or if you set like in your case, you have in trip, so it's not that big of a deal. But if you have a base station, set your base station up at a different location, then it may move your boundary slightly. So then you can set that drone, that physical location, 5 feet from a pole, whatever that may be, wherever you drop that calibration point on the virtual map, and then it'll pull the boundary to that calibration point, essentially. So I hope that answers that question. It'll rectify your offset, essentially. Missing portion of reconstruction in Terra. Is this due to signal loss from RTK base station? Photos were taken and are in the folder, but not included in the reconstruction. This is turning into like a Terra seminar here.
A lot more
Okay.
in depth than before, which is good.
Do what?
A lot more in depth than last time, which is good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know so many people were using Terra. But yes. So if you're missing a portion of the reconstruction in Terra, this is it due to a signal loss from RTK? Possibly. You don't actually have to run RTK to do your mapping with like a mapping drone in Terra, um, or to actually do your mapping and bring it into Terra. But I don't know that I've ever seen RTK. Can I fly the area again and just add those photos? No, you can't. So you cannot add photos again over that missing area. Okay, actually, I take that back. You probably could, as long as you put them in the same folder. Um, it might, and maybe the same lighting because it's got to look the same to some degree for it to stitch it. So you could try that. Where I've seen this be a problem is due to like trees or a difference in elevation, So if we're flying a field at like 200 feet, have really tall trees in the middle, then if when we get like around those trees, it's it's gonna just it can't stitch it because it doesn't have enough overlap because the trees are too close to the camera, and our overlap's not as as high as it is in the rest of the field. So it could be due to trees or elevation, is my guess. I've had the exact same problem as Tony. Started after last M3E update. Interesting. So this could be an update problem.
That's what I'm
Okay.
thinking too after what I'm kind of hearing.
Yeah. Okay. Um, whenever using M3E, I've used M3M, M3T, and Phantom, but yeah, more information on this, guys, would be great if you could email that in to us. All right, Cody, are there any good studies on 2 versus 3 versus 5 GPA on Punch's application? I would like to have good data to show potential customers the pros and cons. Okay, good studies. They're few and far between. Um, so, most studies what they're trying to prove that you need fewer volume, less volume, um, to achieve the same results with fungicide with a drone. Um, we already know that most helicopter airplane guys, especially with like the demand they're facing right now, are put on 2 gallon per acre. Now, might they bump this up uh, to compete with drones because they can carry more? Maybe, I don't know. But we've seen data that shows that 1 gallon per acre, 1.1, the ultra low volume rate versus 2, there isn't any difference. We've done it ourselves. Um, so really, it's just a matter of make sure you get good coverage. So long as you can penetrate the canopy, um, then and and keep your swath width accurate, then it doesn't matter if you use 2, 3, or 5. Um, and the other thing too is if you see a study that's 2 gallon versus 5 gallon, that's not the only variable that changed because to get 5 gallon per acre, you had to slow down, and maybe and that changed your swath width. So then maybe you decrease your route spacing. So the other variable that changed is speed and route spacing, which means that penetration increased as well. So if you see a study that shows that 5 gallon per acre did better, maybe it's not because they put on 5 gallon per acre. Maybe it's because they flew slower and they were able to penetrate the canopy better. Just a thought. Yeah. And Cody, so just to elaborate on this, we actually have some guys up in well around the Great Lakes where uh, tar spot is deadly over the past few years, and they've been putting on higher rate. They've been offering basically a fungicide application package where they're putting on higher volume. They are decreasing their route spacing and they're flying slower so they can penetrate the canopy. They're charging more for this, but it does a tremendous job whenever in terms of application efficacy. Okay.
We got a bunch in the chat there.
Yeah, I saw that here. All right, I'm going to slide over my my Q&A. If you guys drop in Q&As, I will get to them if
I'll let
um,
you know.
yeah, perfect. And I'll pull up the chat here. I'm going to start at the bottom on the chat. So sorry for you guys who dropped it in the top, but I'll start at the bottom. Okay. Um, Kyle says, best advice for someone who is about to launch a custom application business. Oh boy.
You
Okay,
could
this
get into
depends where
this
you're
for a good
starting.
hour.
What's yeah, what's that, Ryan?
As you can get into this one for a good hour here.
Yeah. Okay, so it depends where you're starting from, Kyle. If you know, best advice is you're going to need to round up some clients, of course, so make sure you've got that taken care of. And if you come from, the ag industry already, that's kind of the least of your problems. So make sure you do that first off. Figure out the business model, figure out what kind of applications you're going to be doing, and figure out your customers, who they're going to be, and how you're going to get them. And then, secondly, you're going to probably have more work than you know what to do with if you do that first part right. And so you need to make sure that your in-field setup is functioning well. Your trailer essentially. Spend lots of time on plumbing. Plumbing is very important. A good pump, a good chemical mixing system, a good way to fill the drone fast, a way to transport the drone field to field very quickly and easily. Um, and uh, a comfortable setup is not a bad idea either. So second thing. Um, and lastly, I would say, yeah, try not to overdo it your first year. Your first year is a learning year. Okay. You're gonna want to get out there and make as much money as you can, spray as many acres as you can, but things are not always gonna go your way. So um, don't overdo it your first year. Okay, here we go. From someone with an iPhone. Sorry for all the questions. All right. Thoughts on a single T40 and an enclosed trailer versus open-sided trailer? I am sure each person has some preferences. Just curious on your opinions, curious on set of recommendations. Also, at what point would you switch to running two T40s? Any idea if they will authorize swarm use for one pilot, or is it authorized now? Exemption is to spray at night. Okay, start at the bottom here. There are people filing in exemptions to spray at night, and I think maybe, I don't know if I don't remember if Charlie's told me anybody's been approved for that yet, but there's a bunch of them in there right now. So that'll be first. Nighttime will be first. Multiple pilots we already talked about that. That'll be a year or so off. At what point to switch from one T40 to two T40s? Depends how much business you have, I guess. If it's your first year, start with one, unless you have help, plenty of help. You understand kind of the industry already as far as, how chemical works and all that kind of stuff. Then your only focus is, all right, how do we train pilots and do a good job? Then you can easily ramp up to multiple, but pilots is the key right here. Make sure you have good people. Um, Thoughts on a single T40 and an enclosed versus open set trailer? So we run both enclosed and open sided. Our enclosed trailers, we keep it simple, and those are, Ryan just actually built our last one out. Um, we use those for demos, and then for doing smaller type jobs that we have to travel a long ways for. It's nice to throw everything in there, stay at a hotel overnight if you need to, travel 5 hours or whatever. So enclosed are great for that. Enclosed are not great for transporting a lot of liquid payload, swapping out totes. If you're going to be carrying 1,000 gallons, it's hard to do that with an enclosed trailer easily, unless you put your tank right there in the middle of your enclosed trailer. So that's where an open sided trailer is great. It's versatile. You can carry lots of product on there, and then you can push drone up top. So we kind of liked open for our larger scale operations. And guys, keep it simple. On the trailer side, keep it simple, especially your first year. Don't go out and buy a fancy trailer that's going to cost you 30 grand. You probably already have a, a car hauler trailer or equipment trailer or a gooseneck trailer or whatever. Throw some totes on it, generator, and a tank that does the job. We've got guys running three T30s, three multiple T40s with equipment trailers, and it works. Okay, Tanner says, have you seen any exemptions yet for no VO over 55 pounds? Tanner, I have not. Um, we we do expect this to happen relatively soon, but I have not seen any exemptions yet with no VO. And that is for VO, guys. If you don't know, visual observer. You're supposed to have a visual observer, um, along with the pilot, with a 44807 heavy drone. All right. Will we be provided with historical performance data such as settings, rates, effectiveness? I think maybe you asked a question above here. Let me come up here. All right. Can you talk about the support following the purchase? Example, if we have issues with the drone software, what support is offered and the costs for the support, I assume. Um, we prefer to turn our phones off during application season. Would make life a lot easier. No, so this is honestly the entire reason that I wanted to start selling drones in the first place, not just offering the service, was because at that time, a few years ago, we couldn't find anybody who sold the drones and knew anything about ag, knew anything about how to operate these drones, and understood that these are not just drones, these are ag equipment. Okay, it's not a drone, it's a piece of ag equipment. And why do you choose your ag equipment provider? Well, it's because they provide good support, right? They've got parts on the shelf when you need them. They can get stuff to you fast, and if you call them, they answer. So this is exactly what we strive to do. So we have a pretty robust onboarding side of things in terms of training and FAA licensing and helping you get your providing resources for you to get your drone set up and practice, all that kind of stuff. And then we've got a full tech team. So our guys that fix the drones are also the guys that answer the phone and answer your questions whenever you have an issue. We also have people in the office who handle the warranty side of things, which is an enigma a lot of times when it comes to DJI. But for instance, we in the U.S. we put through 75% of the warranties in the U.S. this past summer out of the entire U.S. market. It wasn't because we had 75% of the drones out there. It's just because we actually give a crap about our customers and make sure they get stuff done right. Um, and so yes, we have we've put more effort into our after sales support than our sales side. We don't charge for support. It's just you buy a drone, it comes with it. That's how it's supposed to work. Of course, if you have us fix it, then there's shop fees there. Keep it relatively low cost. We keep our parts pretty low cost. We overnight ship parts. So if you're not right next to us, if you're not right here in Missouri or right next to one of our dealers across the U.S., we overnight ship parts. These things are pretty easy to fix if you do crash them. We have a knowledge hub where you guys have seen a lot of our videos on YouTube. That's probably about 15% of the videos that we make. The rest are our knowledge hub, and they are very detailed instructional videos. How do you fix this? How do you fix that? How do you do all sorts of stuff? So I hope that answers your question there. All right. Also, will we be provided with historical performance data such as settings, rates, effectiveness, any additional information to help bring in hesitant first-time customers? Okay. Yes. So we do have, again, in our resource folder, our knowledge hub, we've got guidelines for settings and rates. As far as the effectiveness side of things goes, we do have some case studies in there, not a ton of case studies in there, because for fungicide on corn, you typically don't need them because demand is extremely high. People know that it works. People know that fungicide works. And so you're not, are you selling the product or are you selling the application service? Because if you're trying to sell the product, well, that's a whole other ballgame. If you're selling the application service and trying to convince somebody that they should use a drone instead of a helicopter and airplane, um, well, maybe you should find a new customer because if there are people who need the application service who are not getting the application service because there's too much demand out there for a lot of these application services, not enough supply. So it shouldn't be too hard. But if you have specific questions on what exactly you're wanting to do with this, then let me know. Okay. Rodney says the maximum distance from an RTK station and remote controller, T30 and T40, or is line of sight more important? Rodney, line of sight is more important. Um, the maximum distance that the system will allow you to fly is like 6,300 feet, something like that. Basically just over a mile. Um, and it'll cut you off essentially. Now, there's never any reason you need to be flying over a mile away from your home point. Never going to fly in a field that's longer than a mile. So if you keep line of sight, you'll have signal at a mile. If you don't keep line of sight, you might not have signal over a mile. Now, for FAA regulations, keep line of sight. If for some reason you want to ensure that if you happen to lose line of sight, that you will still have signal, then the RTK base station, and Ryan can drop a link in here to that. The RTK base state, or sorry, not that, the DJI relay, that is basically a mesh network you can set up in the field. Remote will talk to the relay will talk to the drone, set the relay up really high up in the air or set it out in the field on top of the hill, and you can fly the drone, you know, where you can't see it and you can still operate it and you can still fly it just fine. But remember the FAA part I just mentioned. All right. Slides available from Bill. Um, okay, I'm guessing slides available from this webinar. We'll have this on YouTube.
You got another one in the Q&A area.
Okay, I'll jump over to Q&A first. All right, Tony says, I'm interested in your mixing station. Will those be available for purchase next year? Yes, Tony, they will be available for purchase. How many will we have? Not sure yet. But we are going through a lot of software updates right now with it, trying to make it as future proof as we can for the foreseeable future, and make it as reliable as we can. So I do expect to have those available probably mid to late spring next year.
On the chat, I think Cody Smith said something.
Okay, I think I'm
Towards the
down
bottom.
to Walter. Team has been very helpful, helped us out while we were operating in the field. Hey, thanks, Walter. Glad to hear it. All right, Cody said, on a square 40-acre field, what is a practical range of acres per hour a T40 could spray at 2 gallons per acre on a square 40? If it's a square 40, I assume it's a quarter mile by quarter mile. So means which at a 2 gallon rate with a T40, when you fly full speed at 10 feet high, you're going to achieve about a 32-foot swath. We'll run 34 if we're running with a DRA, a drift reducing adjuvant, in calm winds. We'll run 34 foot because we have the data to show that you can get good coverage at 34 foot. But 32 is what we do. So anyways, quarter mile by quarter mile, you go down, back, and you're going to cover about 4 acres. You're going to land it, you're going to refill it, you're going to get it back up in the air, and you're send it back out there. That takeoff to takeoff time right there is, in that situation, going to be somewhere around 6 minutes, possibly a little bit higher than 6 minutes. So 4 acres every 6 minutes. That's going to be close to 40 acres an hour, but you might not quite hit that, just depending on how long your deadhead time is. If you can't park right there on the edge of the field and you got a deadhead a long ways, that could be longer. which means less acres per hour. All right, Bill. Terrific presentation. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. David, same here. Great. Thanks, David. Appreciate the feedback.
Couple on the
Well,
Q&A side.
I'm waiting for somebody to come in here and say, "You guys didn't answer the phone one time when I called. Gosh darn it!" So far, it hasn't happened. Yeah. Okay, Tony, will there be forestry sprayer nozzles for the Agras T40 similar to the Agras T30? Forestry sprayer nozzles. Okay. Well, technically, the T30 doesn't have forestry sprayer nozzles. We just use nozzles that create larger droplet sizes. So, will you be able to create larger droplet sizes with the T40? Well, currently, in the setting, you can do 500 microns with the double atomizer discs that come on there. Now, you can use a single atomization disc that comes in your remote box, and that will increase droplet size just a little bit. So if you do that and use a DRA or an MSO, crop oil, anything that's going to make your droplets heavier and stick together, that's usually enough um, to get the job done. All right, very thankful for your team at Agri Spray. Great experience with your team. Do you have any outcome data we can share with clients, like efficacy studies, preferably with statistical significance or confidence intervals? Thank you. Benjamin, first off, thank you very much for the compliment. So that's what we've been talking about. This is like people ask about, we want a one pager that shows before and after results or side by side comparisons or this or that. So we have enough, and we don't have like a quick stat, efficacy studies on like, and it depends what you're talking about too. Because if it's like fungicide, then there's a lot of studies out there that universities have done of something specific. Then let us know. We'll see if we can pull some data in and get it to you. If you're wanting something specific like that, let us know. We'll try to get together for you. Um, Philip says, tagging from Tony's question, can you talk about the T40 capabilities in forestry applications? Okay, we talked about the nozzles here. So, yeah. So we talked about the nozzles and the droplet sizes. So this can be achieved, large droplet sizes can be achieved with the T40. Not concerned about that. So what the T40 brings on the forestry side, I don't know if I can talk about much about efficiency, because you might be using 2 gallons per acre. Some guys are going to use a higher volume with forestry. So I can't really talk too much about efficiency. And then what's the area size shape like? But there's a few things that make the T40 a bit unique, possibly a bit better on the forestry side. First off, obviously volume, carry higher volume. Secondly, downforce. T40 is a heavy drone, so it provides very good downforce. So if you need to, if you're flying higher in forest applications, you tend to be flying higher, and you fly slower, you can provide good downforce and get that product down to the ground a bit better than other drones, like even the T30. We actually have, so on a resource folder with our swath width testing, we did a test at 30 feet elevation, specifically for forestry guys, so you could see swath width, all that kind of stuff, at 30 feet with using DRA and whatnot. And then lastly, when you're doing forestry work, you're going to have some differences in terrain. You're going to have, possibly some trees that are still sticking up, and you might not want the drone to actually follow whatever it sees below it, because what it sees below it could be a tree here, then nothing here, tree here, nothing here. And so that's where the T40 has an option where you can turn off terrain following, and it can run its route, but then you basically, it's just flying level flight, regardless of whatever the height is below it, the ground is below it. And then you can manually adjust the height, which is actually pretty nice when it comes to forestry stuff. We use it here in Missouri for like invasive species in forested areas. All right, pan tested T40 spread heavier to the left figure due to one spinning disc. Is there any way to adjust that? Adjust pan test quality, achieve flat, even coverage. All right, Aaron, it'd be nice to know what you tested with, what product you tested with. And I would assume obviously there wasn't wind whenever you tested. Um, so this is not something that I've heard from other folks, at least statistically, you know, high, spreading on one side versus the other. Um, because it has one disc, but it drops, three different spots on that disc. Um, is there any way to adjust that? Well, if you're noticing that consistently, then dropping it heavier on the back of the disc so it slings more out to the right is something to do. Something that we do. So before there was a smaller gate that came out, smaller gate opening that came out with the T40 spreader for like small seeded cover crop here not too long ago. Before that was available here in the U.S. market, we were actually duct taping some of the openings on the disc shut to where it was just open on the edge. And so if you notice that the left is getting more, then the hole on the front, that opens on the gate on the front, essentially duct tape that shut, 25%, 50%, whatever. It'll dump more on the back of the disc and throw more to the right side. That should work. We've done that with the liquid with the spinners on the liquid spray system on the T40 to actually block off to where it doesn't spray in the middle, and then flip it around to where it only sprays in the middle. We've done that. That works. Okay. All right. Let's see. Did we cover everything? Ryan, am I missing anything?
I think that's just about it. I've been watching chat here, and that's pretty much it.
Great. Good questions, guys. I really appreciate these. Entirely different set of questions that we had from last time. So we love doing these Q&A sessions. We will keep doing them. All right, every Wednesday until somebody makes me stop here at Agri Spray Drones or until I fall over throughout the winter time. And we may start changing up our topics a bit. We know we're gonna have a lot of guys interested in some, mapping with Pix4D. A lot of, we'll do a deep dive into M3T or deep dive into N3M, 3M. And so we'll try to do this every Wednesday, same time, same place. So if you guys have more questions, see us back here next Wednesday. All right. If that is all the questions, then I think it is supper time for me. Have a good night, guys. We'll see you later.